Hello again. Welcome back to Portland International Airport in Portland, Maine. Pay no attention to the sounds of the drilling in the wall, or the air conditioner going, or the ambulances going by, or the fire truck that seems to be parked outside or maybe circling the block. We are going to take a nice little jaunt here down to Danbury, Connecticut, where they do not have regularly scheduled airline service, but they once did, and they probably wouldn't have flown it in a plane, cue the ambulance, where they wouldn't have flown equipment maybe quite as big as this, but they get the occasional Cessna Citation in there and a few King Airs, but this is a little bit on the porky side for the airport. It's also where I flew my first real-world landing onto runway 26, which is sort of down at the bottom of a hill over the highway there, over Highway 7, US 7. So that makes it at least a little bit fun. It's a little bit of a steep approach, and it's a lot more fun in a bigger plane. We're probably going to go in the opposite direction onto runway 8. Briefly put, here is our flight here. I'm going to fly the Portland, I think it's the Portland to the Portland 4, I'm sorry, departure, which is just heading and then vectors, and we're going to vector ourselves to Kennebunk VOR. We will pick up the highly esteemed, well-regarded Victor 106, and we're going to take that all the way to Westover, actually to Westfield Barnes, Massachusetts, and then we're going to go direct to Valerie and Basie and come around the other side, and we're going to avoid the world's biggest collection of TFRs I've ever seen in my life. We've got Trump movement here. We've got Trump movement there. We've got Trump Golf Course here in Morristown, where Air Force One goes in, the smaller Air Force One. We've got Trump Tower here. We've got football games. We got everything. We got a big honkin', look at that mess going on here. We're going to avoid that like the plague, as you might as well. There's weather to the north. There's weather to the south. We're going to kind of sneak in here. There's a GPS approach in here from the west, and that's about really our only chance of getting in. If not, we'll divert to Bridgeport. We'll just fly an ILS approach into there probably, and probably fly it pretty close to minimums, truth be told. So anyway, let's get going here. I managed to get the autopilot working. Make sure the parking brake is set, and it is. In the meantime, we will get our batteries on, or as my Grandpa Sidney would say, our batteries. There we go. And turn on our nav light, turn on our beacon. We're going to be starting soon. Get our gens on and reset, which you end up sort of reflexively doing in this airplane whenever you change anything, is resetting the gens and resetting the bleeds. Don't know why, but you have to. I know the result if you don't, and it is modeled. If you don't reset these gens after you start, it continues to draw power from the battery until the battery ends up dead. We'll kill that caution, and we'll start number 2. Go down here, and the sequence here compared to the real-world videos I've seen is eerily accurate here. So you get the rise in the RPM, the rise in temp. In a few seconds you'll get the introduction of fuel and the starter cutout. Everything is just about exactly correct. Just move our props up to min there, and we'll start number 1. And we'll monitor the start again. And you notice when you didn't, I didn't give you a chance to see it, but when you do move the props up, the prop speed spikes up and then catches as everything starts flowing through the governor, and it starts governing and doing its thing. So watch what happens here. We'll just move our props up to min here, and watch what happens there. Prop RPM spikes, catches, and then goes back to min. Regulates itself, in essence. Just set our trim while we're here. Landing this airplane is a challenge. It's a challenge on a short runway. It's a challenge on any runway. That is maybe the only quibble I've got with this compared to at least the real-world videos I've seen of this, wherein it is not easy, but it doesn't seem as hard as this. It does tend to fall out of the sky, that much is true. Doesn't float hardly at all, that much is true. And what seems a little bit different compared to the real world, at least as I've seen it, not as I've experienced it, is the landing gear on this plane seems to be a little bit squishier and bouncier. And it makes for more bounces, but some of that comes down to technique. As I've seen it, let's get our avionics going here. As I've observed it and as I've read up on it a little bit, you usually want to be just about 120 as you sail over the fence, and the torque settings I've seen are anywhere from about 22 to about 30%, and if you creep off them at all in the flare, you do it by 1 or 2 percentage point. You do not chop the power, or you will go down like Fraser. So at any rate, as our AHRS's spin up and this gets initialized, we'll just pop up the mighty Garmin here. And we will pop our ATIS in here.
System test okay.
This is our audio panel here. It's wonderful.
Portland INTL Jetport Information Romeo. 1900 Zulu weather. Wind 210 at 6. Visibility 10. Sky clear. Temperature 17. Dew point 16. Altimeter 2986. Arriving runway 18. Departing runway 18. Advise on initial contact. You have Romeo.
Romeo it is. And 18 is what it is. It's a 100 foot runway. We are not a sprightly performer, but we'll make do. And let's get our flight plan entered. Pardon me. There we go. Okay, DXR is our destination. Okay, and you notice how that slews the course indicator as it should. We'll go to Kennebunk. I keep wanting to say Kennebunkport because that's where the Bush compound is, but it is Kennebunk, and we'll get on an airway after that, and that would be the 106. And we're going to take that all the way to all the way to Barnes, I think. Double check that. Yes, to Bath. And we'll load that. And there we go. We'll load our, well, actually, let's load, Valerie first. And so, I love the Garmin. I love the touch screen. I hate knobs in a simulator. Doesn't work. Fiddly as hell. So okay, so Valerie, and we'll do at the moment, we'll do the GPS 8, and we'll do the Basie transition, and so now there's Basie and Valerie's up here. So that that should work for us, and let's just go up here, see what we got, and go over here and see what we got. Okay, there's our airway. There is Kennebunk. And there is, we're good. We're so good. We are lovey-dovey. All right, 2986. Runway heading is what, 178, I think it is. Bug that up. The SAAB, like any good SAAB, whether it's an automobile or an airplane, takes anything you might expect to see in front of you and instead puts it down on the floor. So these are our course and heading knobs. The SAAB automobile, of course, puts the ignition switch on the floor. Let's also tune in since we're so close to Kennebunk. Let's tune in Manchester 1144, and we're going in on the 06, the 240. So 1144 and 240, we'll get that. And 240 for that. And you see they thoughtfully give you a little cheat thing. So I've got all these knobs programmed to keyboard commands, only that's pretty close to the pause key, isn't it? 240, and now we will just, there it is, but we'll also present it here using the second course button right here. And at the moment, since that's going to be our direction of flight, it happens to coincide with our cyan needle, so that can be confusing, but we'll also present it on our RMI so we can have it pointing like so. That way, once we get airborne and within range. Let's see, apart from that, got our standby pitot heat on. I'm going to turn our windshield heats on, mainly for superstition. I don't really know what the SOP is for the SAAB, but it probably can't hurt. Get those on. We don't need any other eyes protection. Arm our auto Corson, and that's sort of like a poor man's auto feather. We'll set our CTOT, which is kind of like a poor man's FADEC, and we'll get squawking. Bear in mind that sometime during the flight, the Garmin, because it doesn't quite work, is going to reach out and it's going to farkle this, and it's going to end up setting it to VFR. Just ignore it. It's just a problem, I suppose. Anyway, let's see. I think we're pretty damn good otherwise. So let's get on out to runway 18 and get out of Dodge. We'll initially set up a climb mode, and we'll climb at 140. As soon as we reach our acceleration altitude, we'll switch into raw IAS, and then we'll bug our way as we go. Our acceleration altitude will be 1,100 feet. We'll bring back the props. We'll bring up the flaps. We will do the hokey pokey and accelerate and climb at about 160, give or take. Also, we do need to engage our tiller, and do need to look around, and we do need to turn on our taxi lights. And with that, let us get out of Dodge here. And of course, as we set takeoff flaps, of course, the Garmin 750 is utterly magnificent in that, of course, it's got safe taxi diagrams as well. So we are extra special lovey-dovey here. The only problem is, so far, it's not yet integrated into the 3D cockpit, so it's just as an overlay. But when the day comes that it is, glory, hallelujah, how beautiful it will be. It's nice to use it as a pop-up anyway. This is just a little bit of freeware scenery. You can see it's Lego brick scenery, but it's nicely done Lego brick scenery. I sometimes wonder why, with all of the stock control tower shapes they have, they don't have the standard FAA sort of medium to large size ones that sort of the poured concrete tan ones that went up in the mid 80s to mid 90s all around the country. But at least this isn't that weird rounded futuristic one that looks like a spaceship that I've never seen at an airport anywhere. At least that's sort of semi-plausible. Anyway, I assume this is our taxiway. It is. I'm sorry I don't have the name of the airport creator immediately handy, but whoever did it did a very nice job. I was going to say we'll do a control system check, but I can't see my control system. That's a lovely thing. Okay, flaps set, trim is set. CTOT set and armed, which means as soon as you move above 64% torque, it automatically then advances the engines to whatever you've preset, which in our case is right around 100%. We're at just about maximum takeoff weight here, so this is going to be a relatively real estate consuming departure, shall we say. Oh, and for the landing, generally the descent is done at about this far nose down, and generally I've seen the flare about 3 to 4% nose up. And again, unless you get that absolutely, completely, utterly spot on, the plane will either smack down or float, and it will almost always bounce. So you sort of have to hold those few degrees nose up, and then just a second or two before you touch down, you have to relax the back pressure just a little bit. In essence, you have to give it a little bit of what a 727 pilot once dubbed the Boeing push, which sort of unloads the main gear a little bit just the instant before you touch down, so that you're not rotating the gear onto the runway. We'll just hold short right here. And we'll go on with the landing lights, off with the taxi lights, on with the strobes. We'll ping. We'll check everything else, check our caution panel, check our flaps, trim, set, advance our props to max, but not further. If you do it one notch further, you get them into a kind of flat disc range, and you get no torque, and that can cause problems. All right, and we will get going here. And the procedure again is going to be to advance the power to where we want it to be when we cut the seat top off. So that's a little bit more of an art than a science. We check for auto coarsen to arm. That'll be this light over here. We check for us to go out of beta mode, which I think we are anyway. We check our torque and make sure CTOT engages and we don't over torque. We can over temp for a moment or two. Apart from that, we check normally for acceleration and all the rest of that, and it will not, I'll just tell you right off the bat, it will not be sprightly. All right, runway is identified, runway heading is set, the mode control panel is set. So I'm going to hold this actually on the brakes. I'm just going to advance it to there, and CTOT will catch. Okay, there we go. Auto Courson has not armed. All right, airspeed is alive. Oh, it has, okay, it's just a dim light. 80 knots, checked. We're going to rotate it around 115, 118. And as you'll see, it doesn't exactly leap into the air, so we'll just call semi-positive rate and gear up. We're going to hold runway heading until we get to our acceleration altitude. I'm just going to fly the flight director now. Retrim, come up to 140. We can, if we want, go into nav mode. We'll do this all at once. So, okay, there's 1100. Props come back. Flaps come up. CTOT comes off. We'll nose down just a little bit. We'll adjust our torque because it's inevitably never quite right. So we'll torque up there. We'll accelerate. We'll enter IAS and nav mode, and we'll turn on course. And we'll climb at 160 now. Or 156. Whatever. Close enough. Close enough for jazz. And we will briefly admire the view. Just in a nice standard rate turn right here. The flight director would like me to be a little bit more aggressive, but there's really no need. We're climbing nicely. You can see we're at about 85–90% torque, and we're probably going to be temp limited. So I'm just going to creep up the power a little bit. And I'm going to observe our temperatures. I will bet you we run out of temps before we run out of torque. We are obviously in IMC. Which means we're doing a standard instrument scan, which starts, for me at least, starts here and goes there, and goes there, and goes there, and goes back here. Your mileage may vary, but if you know what your power setting is, and you know what your pitch is, your speed should follow, and this can confirm it. You don't want to be a slave to the flight director. You want to have a sanity check. You want to know where you are with respect to our flight plan. I'm just going to turn off auto coursing. There we go. And reset our bleeds. And I see something I forgot to do, but it's not really important at the moment. That is our emergency lights. We're not armed. I did not arm them. And I would have caught that if I had checked the caution panel. Alright, so we're turning onto course here. And as you can see, we're not yet picking up our next VOR. We're probably right over Kennebunk right about now. Let's just see. And I'm just hand flying the plane. It is an absolute joy to hand fly. Yeah, we're inbound Kennebunk. That's fine. I'm just going to turn off our second course here. And we're climbing nominally, and that's all good. So at the moment, I'm not going to do anything except admire the view. This is courtesy of X-Plane's standard weather, because X-Enviro fights with this airplane right now, and Ortho 4XP. And if I had to guess, that's I-95 right down there, so we could follow that all the way to Miami, theoretically. Other than that, we're just keeping an eye out. You see how our transponder switched to 1200? All right, there's really nothing we can do about that as long as we're running the Garmin. But, you know, it's the wages of sin, I suppose. And what we can do is we can let people get up. We can even let them smoke. Let's let them smoke, too. Why not? And if you're curious, by the way, this little display here measures deviation from speed, high and low. So if you bug up a speed, this shows whether you're on target. And look at how much positive stability, or at least neutral stability, this plane has. I'm basically hands off. It's got, well, it's actually got neutral stability. I always get the two reversed, but what it's got is, if you give it a little bit of roll input, it will keep rolling gently. Some of that could be a function of rudder trim too, but I think we're looking pretty good. All right, let's do the flight sim thing and turn off our lights. Yeah, that is 95. Look at that. We could fly that all the way down the east coast of the United States. And while we're at it here, let me just arm our emergency lights. There we go. This is one of the few airplanes, and I will say with this yoke, force feedback yoke, you can look around and fly the plane, and you're not going to fall out of the sky because you can feel the airplane moving, which is great. Now let's see if the autopilot works. You ready? Hold it for 3 seconds. 2, 3. Hands off. There we go. And so far so good. That will of course allow us to do the magnificent I will say this: I hate when simmers do that immediately on takeoff or immediately shoot to a window view in the middle of departure or an arrival, only because maybe I'm a little old-fashioned, but I think we owe it to you to try and give you some idea of how to kind of do it by following along. And if we're always like going, in the middle of something, I know when I'm watching it breaks my concentration, but it's a stylistic tick, I suppose. Square up our heading bug. And let's just look at our temps here. See how the torque has gone down as the air has gotten thinner, obviously. So what I'm going to do as we ascend here, I'm just going to bring our props back a bit more. Believe it or not, these SAABs were touted for their quietness for turboprops. I've flown in the back of them, and I have to say they didn't seem too quiet to me, but who knows. Now you notice as we bring the props back, they take a bigger chunk of air, and that means that the torque numbers creep up a little bit from about 62 to about 75. So physics, raw physics. Look at that nice view of the New Hampshire and North Shore of Boston there. Let's see where we are. All right, and we now are receiving our next VOR, which is Manchester. So yeah, that would be the New Hampshire coast. And we're coming up on 2,500 away. And as soon as we level off, we'll end up going at about 240-ish, and probably about 275 over the ground if we're lucky. Although we got a stiff headwind here, so this could give us a little bit of a slowdown, but not much. Everything else looks nominal. Let's just look at our cabin here. Our differential is fine, and our cabin altitude, I'm just sneaking through here, is fine. 1,000 away, so let's see if we level off. Better yet, I'm going to slowly bug up a higher speed here. Not too much, so we can ease into our cruising altitude. It's not as easy as doing it. With your hand there dragging it along, because you tend to overcompensate. So we'll just ease on up. You can see by our crab right there versus the our direction of flight, or our track over the ground, that we are in fact experiencing a wind from right about there. All right, now comes the moment of truth. And in the meantime, bring our props back to about there. And let's see if we level off. I'm betting we will. I'm optimistic. All right, it enunciates that we've captured altitude. And I do believe if we haven't, we've come damn close, so that'll be good. Oh, nice. All right, I'm just reading the newspaper as I go. I shouldn't do that. Not that I shouldn't read the newspaper because it distracts from the flying. I shouldn't read the newspaper because it pisses me off. So I'm guessing that's the Merrimack River right down there, and that's probably Portsmouth, New Hampshire, because that right down there is probably Pease Air Force Base, or what used to be Pease Air Force Base. That sure looks like Pease. I don't know what they call it now, but that's a big runway. That's for B-52s. That's you can annihilate countries with bombers from there. Not that that isn't in the news these days, but you know, yikes. All right, so I think what we should do, considering that this isn't an especially long flight, let's start planning our arrival, our descent. So we have a utility for that. It's called vCalc. And let's see. Our procedure wants us at BASE. Let's find out. We want to be 3,000 at BASE. So plug that in. And that's about right for the speed we want to be coming down. 2 miles before is fine. Give us a chance to slow. There aren't any immediate constraints before that, so we'll be fine. Let's see. Other than that, I think we're good. Where's our ATIS? 2775. We're still a ways away here, so just getting it ready. And you can see we've screwed up our transponder, but half an hour TOD. And let's see if we can just get that back. Go back to squawking Kubrick right there. All right, so there we're good to go. And boy, this looks pretty damn good. Not only is this Ortho 4XP, but it's also Massachusetts sort of world to X-plane, custom buildings and things. There's a little bit of Z-axis fighting, I guess you'd call it. But other than that, this looks like what it looks like when you fly over it. It's just really amazing. The only thing that X-plane isn't that great at is where to stick the trees. It sticks them over things that aren't forests, but there are some enterprising scenery designer type people who are working on a fix for that as well. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, got quite a headwind here we're coping with. Let's just see if we can get a little bit more power out of things. I'm just going to get it right up to the temp limits. I really shouldn't fly right about there, but that's why we're flying a sim. Just going to walk them down just a little bit. See if we can get just a little more speed out of it. It's pretty slim pickings, but we do what we can here at Virtually Airline. So what do we got going over the ground? Probably, yeah, okay. As to why, oh, I was going to say why we're just very slightly offset, but that's probably, I don't know why. That's interesting. But we are a little offset. And we're loading a little scenery, which is why things are slowing down here a little bit. See what she looks like here. Sounds great. So this plane has been updated to the point where the makers of it indicate that it's okay to use it in X-Plane 11, but they freely admit that it's entirely at your own risk, or they warn that it's at your own risk, and on top of that, they freely admit that the performance numbers are not exactly perfectly matched to real life. As a matter of fact, and think about our departure when you think about this. It seems that the airplane at the moment is slightly overpowered compared to the real thing. So if you could imagine it being even more sluggish than it is now. And the performance isn't quite as good as with X-Enviro in these clouds because, because it's not X-Enviro. And X-Enviro seems to fight with many things, and X-Enviro also hasn't been updated in about, I want to say about 6 months. But they promised lots of good things, and certainly paid enough money for it. So I hope they get it right. All right, so we're approaching Manchester, and Manchester Airport should be off to our right. Can we see it? I cannot, but let's see if we can remedy that. That's a no good. Okay, no problem. And we're loading up scenery. Actually, that is Manchester right down there. That's the city. Sure looks like it. Nice. Okay. And we're turning, as we should, over the Manchester VOR. You'll see that flip. As we get over the cone of confusion and load scenery. I really have to put my ortho scenery on a solid state drive, but there's too much of it. I have to say, that looks just like Manchester. Look at that. Look at this. Look at the suburbs outside of it. Look at that. The power lines down here. That's pretty damn good. The imagery is from Bing, by the way, as opposed to the imagery of northern New Jersey, which is, of course, from Bada Bing. No, I'm sorry. That was too easy. Too easy. I just hope our frame rates don't stay crappy like this. See where we are with respect to our descent. Yeah, we are getting hammered here. 36 knots coming right at us. And a whole lot of stuff loading. Look at that. But, I mean, just look at that, though. That basically looks like the medium-sized city that it is. And laid out like it, too. Do I dare put up a frame rate counter? I don't know if I even want to. It might depress me. I think it's doing okay now. It's much better out west for some reason than the east. Ah, 36, 37, okay. It's just loading stuff, that's all. A little track IR, a little bit glitchy, so apologies there. Just turn off track IR for a second, see if, yeah, it's much smoother when track IR is not on, but luckily, we'll sort of be over the boonies for a while, so the performance should increase a little bit. Danbury happens to sit near the intersection with a bunch of scenery tiles, so it may load up a lot of them. I just hope it doesn't overload the system. I want to be able to shoot this approach. We are still pressurized. We still have enough fuel. And all of our temps are normal. And everything is exactly as it should be. I think I made a little bit of a video a few months back talking about Ortho 4XP and how to make tiles. Give it a look if you feel the need. It's not by any means the be-all and end-all guide to it, but it's enough to get you started, I think. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but well, I know enough to be dangerous. I do know that they will be coming out with a 1.5 version of this airplane very soon, or reasonably soon. X-Aviation is, and that will be explicitly X-Plane 11 ready, according to Cameron, one of the developers. They'll have a 1.42 out at some point, probably sooner, and that's just an interim release, and they are working on a 2.0, which is going to be a real serious heavy-duty rewriting, retexturing, refactoring, all sorts of stuff. And I mean, you know, I know people say, well, it's a fairly old airplane, you know, it's what, I guess about 3 years old, but I still think it looks pretty damn good. Goran, who does the visual stuff, I don't know if he does more, but he certainly does the visual stuff. I mean, look at this. You get the little grubby grunge here and there and little fingerprints and crap, and look at the little smudging there. That's nice stuff. Really is. It's just, it is artfully done. There's no other way to put it. It's really nice. So they do good work, and they're fussy about it, which is great. And the airplane sounds good, which is doubly great. And it doesn't look like a cartoon character version of itself. So we are now past Manchester here, and we are inbound to the Gardner VOR. And I wonder if I can get the frequency information. I don't want to edit the flight plan, but I'll bet you what we can do is go here, find nearest filter VORs, GDM Gardner. 110.6, we can put it in our active, and we can put that in our nav 2, and we can present it right there, and we can oh, here, let me just present it right here and see it, and we're direct to it. And so there, as you can see, there we are. And if we wanted to, we could switch over. And in the world of the Mighty Dash, this would be switching over from pink needles to blue needles, but in our case, it would be switching over from a GPS nav source to a radio nav aid nav source, or switching over left side to right side, depending on how you want to do it. And so now we can see, and we can cross-check, and we can also look at our RMI and cross-check, and we can find out we're heading straight for Gardner, and actually we're only 8 miles away. When we depart Gardner, though, let's see where we want to be pointing. We want to be at about 246. And we're coming in right now on, well, precious close to it, actually. 251, so we're going to make a 5-degree turn to our left. So let's just pretend we're doing the slant alpha. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Change our heading, and we'll observe it do its thing there. And you push the head and pull the tail, so if you want to go this way, then you turn into it, the direction you want to shove that. Or conversely, obviously, you pull the bottom, which also means turning that way. As we approach the cone of silence. The cone of science. I think these clouds take a big bite out of performance, but let's also look at our other nav aids we want to maybe have. And actually, we want to maybe have Barnes 1130. We'll get that ready to go. probably after that, Carmel, New York. And there's our turn. There's our 5-degree turn. And we will be tracking outbound on, what did we say, the 246. And we should be coming onto that course momentarily. Onto that radial. It's not displaying accurately right now because we are in the confusing cone of confusingness. Ooh, am I getting hungry? I gotta get some dinner soon. We better get landing soon. What time is it? In the real world, I got 20 minutes to get on the ground or I don't get the chicken sandwich I want, the fried chicken sandwich I want. My neighborhood tavern. Not Tavern on the Green, although that's pretty close, that big old tourist trap. This is Tavern down the street. Oh, in addition to the drilling and the ambulances and the fire trucks, the apartment building next to mine has got a rooftop terrace which is below my window, and there are now people hooting and hollering. Maybe they're just hooting, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say through the sound of the mighty SAAB's turboprops. Oh, here's our newspaper headline, conveyed without comment. President Trump didn't criticize white nationalists after the deadly violence in Virginia, leading to a backlash even from his own party. Well, you know, if you can't say neo-Nazis are bad, if you can't say something bad about neo-Nazis, who can you say something bad about? But that is a matter for another forum. What's the line from the Blues Brothers? No, from Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is so funny now because, you know, it obviously seems self-evident, but obviously Indiana Jones didn't know it back in the late 30s when he says, Nazis. I hate Nazis. You know, and a good thing too. And we laughed because it sounded weird, and we cheered because he was a couple years ahead of his time, thank goodness. So, I hate neo-Nazis, just for the record. Just to let you guys know, neo-Nazis, not for me. Same goes for neo-Stalinists, too. I'm not a big commie either. I tend to prefer my politics straight up the middle. Radical moderation, that's the deal. Radical tolerance, that's a nice thing, too. Kind of like that. I like that a lot. I'm just going to adjust our rudder trim a little bit. We're going to actually, this is radical rudder trim here. That's my real philosophy here. I don't know why, but we're just a little bit listed off to our left, it seems like. It's a little roll coupling. I don't know. No, you know, the wind is coming right down our throats here. All right, let's see. Temperatures. Do we need ice protection? No, we're probably a little too cold. All right. Descent. "12 minutes. Very nice. See where we are. All right, that's the Connecticut River. That is Hartford, probably. Yes, it is. Good. Okay, we're going in the right direction, kids. There is our approach. You can see we loop around here. That's the Housatonic River, but no, that's the Hudson. The Housatonic is right, well, practically right there. All right, it's gonna be a race to get my fried chicken sandwich. But it must be done. That can get some booze down my throat. There's our ice protection guidelines there. We're 1 degree below, so, you know. And the performance isn't terrible right now. It's a little jittery, so my apologies there. Our arrival here, let's take a look, is kind of fun. We use Basie as our IAF. We'll be coming in from here, coming around this way. And then we fly through this kind of valley here. And you can see there's a displaced threshold. It's only going to be about 4,000 feet of runway. And our decision altitude is going to be 1260, which is about 800 feet, well, 803 feet actually above the ground. So that should be fun. It is a normal glide path. And until this GPS approach was there, it was, I think they had a VOR approach, and it was a little bit less forgiving, shall we say. So the only question being, how well will this thing fly a coupled LNAV plus V approach, and we'll find out, I suppose. If not, we will just follow the step downs and pretend we'll just use the GPS for lateral guidance. I don't know how soon it or how late it presents a glide path, but I'll bet you it won't do it until here, which means we're really on a step down approach for 5 miles after Edgar's. But that shouldn't be a big deal. All right, we should be about 10 minutes from TOD. Eight minutes, and so at about 4 minutes to the hour, we'll start going down. And what we'll do is we will probably go down in speed mode. We'll let our speed creep up a bit, and we'll aim for about 1,400 feet per minute given the speed, or actually closer to 1,200 feet per minute. So that will do us nicely. And we're over, well, we're coming into Barnes right now, although this shouldn't really be going ape shit quite like that. Let's see how close we are. No, let me just turn that off so that we don't drive ourselves bonkers. You can see it's fine right there. And we will plug in an altitude here. Platform altitude of, what did we say? We said 3. just check to make sure there's no intervening terrain in case we want to come down a little faster. There shouldn't be. We're not exactly in the Rockies. But let's see. We've got 15, 16, 2,300. All right, so yeah, as long as we're above 3,000, looks like we're good the entire way, which kind of stands to reason. All right, there we go. About 5 from TOD right now. $63 from Valerie. You can see GPS LNAV plus V. So it's not a precision. It's not a precision glide slope, or with localizer precision either. So it's the next best thing to an LPV approach, but not quite. And there's some subtleties to that I don't yet get, but the LPV approaches you generally find are as close to an ILS approach for all practical purposes, especially in the sim where you don't have satellite reception questions to worry about, or ground-based augmentation reception things to worry about either. So let's see where we are with respect to our descent. Probably about 3 minutes away. 5 minutes away. My body clock is running a little slow. We're still facing this headwind here, and you know, I should really see if we can get Danbury's ATIS in here.
DDXR Den.
Yeah, come on.
DDXR Danbury CT Information Sierra. 1900 Zulu weather. Wind light and variable. Visibility 10. Sky conditions 2400 view. Temperature 21. Dew point 20. Altimeter 2990. Arriving runway 17, departing runway 17. Advise on initial contact, you have Sierra.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. They almost never use 17 and 35 unless there's bad wind. As a rule, when the wind is calm,
KDXR Danbury CT
they will
Sierra. 1900 Zulu weather.
They'll use 2.6 for most of the operations, and when the weather is bad or the wind is favorable, they'll use 8. They don't generally use 17 and 35 unless they have to, because the approach, especially to 35, goes right through a mountain valley and can be kind of scary. To tell you the truth, and has kind of weird, unpredictable winds, because you're kind of sort of on the top of a. It's not really a mountain, but it's, you know, it's, I guess it's about 3,000 foot hills, 2,500 foot hills, give or take. You know, you're sunk in a little bowl for it, and it's I guess it's intimidating. I wouldn't mind flying it in a small plane, but my buddy Les's friend, he's got a Citation Mustang. He flies in there, and they try not to use that runway, but we just got a brief glimpse there of Interstate 84. Actually, we're north, so it's probably 90. It's probably the Mass Pike we're over right now. And we should be about 2 minutes. Look at that, all right, from TOD. So, let's start getting ready. Tell people to sit down and put out their cigars. Two minutes. So we'll activate our approach when we're inbound Basie. There's our final approach fix. That's where we should start getting vertical guidance. Now it will pop up a message, or it usually pops up a message as we're loading scenery here naturally. Warning us that we're coming up on our TOD. Just let this load up first, please. Oh, I need one of those Threadripper processors. There we go. There's our TOD message. Yep, there we are. All right, so we will pop into IAS mode here, and we'll bug up a higher speed, and we'll roll off the power until we get about that rate of descent right there. And we will sink into the muck as soon as it loads the frickin' scenery. Oh, don't screw up now, please. Please, please, please. Let it do its thing here. I've only got, just so you know, 12 gigs of VRAM here. This is a Titan X I'm running, a Titan X Pascal. So if we're out of VRAM, that's going to be bitterly disappointing. And I'm not sure what we can do about it, but that sometimes happens. There we go. Come on. Come on, little airplane. You can do it. I know you can do it. Please. Not now. It's using 13 gigs of VRAM. That is just so frickin' wrong. Let's see if it'll fly. It just might. Going to increase our rate of descent a little bit by rolling off the power. I want to keep our airspeed up because I want to be able to get that fried chicken sandwich. No, not quite like that. Come on. There we go. So I'm actually going to keep a little more power on than I would or should as we come down. Just come screaming on in here. Just keep an eye on this, see how well it monitors it in real time. It says we need 1180. We're doing considerably more than that. So I'm actually going to reduce our rate of descent by creeping on a little more power. And it will pitch us up ever so slightly. Alrighty, we'll do the old flight sim thing here. Warn the cabin crew to pick up the barf bags. Done. We're looking good. And again, we're going to aim for a speed over the numbers of 120 and a power setting probably ending up being about close to 30% torque. Props full and flaps 25. We will keep the power on pretty much into the flare, and even in the flare we will just walk it back ever so slightly is really pretty much it. So we're 26 miles from Valry, and then we're going to come around to the south and back to the east, and there we go. That's about the right speed for our descent. And let's see where we are over the ground. You see what I mean right there? Looking pretty damn good. That's our missed approach point. And our missed approach altitude, I believe, is 3. But given this is a GPS approach, I have to actually dial my altitude down to the decision altitude, because otherwise it doesn't seem to couple the approach. So anyway, let's see. Missed approach is 3,000 to Andel. Left turn to Andel, holding on the 225. Groovy. Which I believe is plugged in there. I will bet you already. Yes, it is. Look at that. That's wonderful. Alright, we are 19 from Valry and 25 from Basie, and we're about 500 feet below the path we need to be at, but that's fine. Give us a little time to slow down. Actually, we're less than that because we set a target of 2 miles before. So I'm just going to roll off a little bit more power here, and I'm going to increase our rate of descent about 1,100 feet per minute. So you see I'm controlling the vertical speed with power because the autopilot is holding the speed, the airspeed constant. So as I give it less power, it's doing what you would do if you flew manually. It's pitching down to maintain that speed, and therefore our sink increases. I'll just do our in-range checks here. We'll turn on our auto coursing. We have not been cleared to land. We won't turn on our taxi light, but bleeds are fine. Our airfield elevation, I can't tell. But yeah, okay, yep, that's set right. 500 feet. And in a second, we'll be able to see Danbury Airport. I believe that's the Housatonic River. If not, in a second we'll see Candlewood Lake, which is a big lake that runs across our way this way. And that's probably US 7 right there, but I'm not sure. All right, so we're about 3,500 above, and we are in very nice shape. We could come down 45 with no problem. So now I'm going to slow us, and that's going to slow our rate of descent, but it'll also roll off some power too. That is also, didn't want to balloon up. Well, that got it almost right. I should have rolled off the power first. But we're going to slow us down to below 200. And get us in a position where when we level off, we'll bleed off even more. That's about right. It's going to roll us down to flight idle now. Probably going to be ever so slightly high now because of those shenanigans, but let's just see. Just establishing a little bit more gentle descent because we do have room at 12 miles and 3,000 feet, so that's fine. I also want to eliminate some drastic configuration changes because I want to keep my power as constant as I can as I come down. So I'm only changing one variable at a time. So I'm slowing down, or I'm adding flaps, I'm adding drag, but I'm not doing that and changing power settings and changing rates of descent. That's about right. Okay, so after Valerie, we will load. We'll activate the approach. Okay, we're coming up on about 1,500 away. That's the beautiful sound of the hydraulic pumps going. That's the Hudson River Valley up ahead that way. And we'll activate the approach. Set runway heading, which is not there. It's not there either. It's there. All right, we'll get in a notch of flaps. We will slow down as soon as we level off, and as soon as we level off, we can start coming down to 2,100 after Basie. No, I'm sorry, we have to keep 3,000 all the way to Edgar, so we will. So I'm going to start to bring in some power right here, a little bit more. Okay, we're arriving at our altitude. I'm going to bring our props to full at this point. And I'm going to say we've been cleared to land. All right. So in a second, be able to come down to 2,100. Got one notch of flaps out. There's our turn at Basie. I'm sorry, we have to stay at 3,000 all the way to Eggers, so we got 5 miles after Basie. Okay, everything looks good. Lights, auto Corson, set. Okay, so we've got 5 miles to go here, and then from there we come on down. So 5 miles to Eggers. Getting just a little slow though. You see how nose up we are? There we go, that's about right. We're at about 40% torque. Little slow, but let's take this arrival a little slow. And let's start coming down. There we are. Only we're going the wrong damn way. Shit, you know that's going to do? That is going to slow us the hell down. And let's do this instead. And let's roll off the power here. And do it that way. There we go. And we'll get our gear out. Get fully configured. We'll bring in our approach power. Right about there. A little bit fast. And there we go. Turning to final. It should enunciate in a second the correct mode. I'm going to spin this down to our decision altitude. There we go. LNAV plus V enunciated. Pop into approach mode. See if we can get the appropriate guidance. We should be coming up on enough, which is the final approach fix, at which point we should start going down. If not, we'll do it ourselves. Got a bit too much power in here at the moment. That's because we're not descending yet. Don't want to go any slower than that. See, we're at about 45% torque, and we are 2 miles from enough. So we should be coming down in about another 30 seconds. And I am psychologically committed to this landing, sadly. As soon as we start coming down, I'm going to roll off the power to about 30%. And there we should be in 1 mile. Half a mile. Here we go. Let's see if it works. The glide slope is armed, or what the vertical guidance is armed. Let's see if it will fly this approach. 2.2. Yes, it does. Okay. I'm going to bring us down to our landing torque, give or take. There we go. All right. And I think what I'll do is fly the airplane. In a second, as soon as I get it fully configured. Going a little fast here. There we go. Okay, we're right where we want to be torque-wise. A little bit to the left, of course. About 500 feet above right now. It's a little bit high, too. This is correct. There we are, coming back, coming back, coming back, coming back. And there's the airport. Get ourselves a little bit more stable. Trim ourselves down a little bit, actually. And you can see that sort of displaced threshold there. You can already tell this is not going to be pretty. A little bit mistrimmed. There we go.
500.
Checked. A little bit fast. Yeah, trimmed a little nose high is what it is. Hey, there's a palm tree. I'm getting a little sloppy here too. And welcome to Danbury, Connecticut, where the local time is time for fried chicken. And time not to be stuck in beta mode here. I hate when that happens. Alright, well, we'll just belly up to the bar. And let's see how bad that landing looked here. Let me just pull up someplace convenient. So that is the hill and the highway you come over for runway 26, which makes it a lot of fun. Alright, so let's see what that looked like. It wasn't a heinous landing, but it was not the best.
Don't sink. Don't sink.
Oh, hang on a second.
Don't sink.
This thing does that. Turn off the gammon. Go. a little sloppy on the roll axis too. That's my yoke acting up. So slight flare, slight roll off of the power. You see how it bounced right there? See how springy it is? That's probably not quite perfect, but you know what? Hell, I'll take it. I'll take it, and we will take it. And with that, see you all again next time. Bye-bye.